Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Just have your attention, please. All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead and take out your notes. So we're going to be continuing on looking at the scientific revolution. I did just give you your study guide for chapter 16, which for you guys, the quiz is going to be after the break on the Wednesday after the break, so the 6th. That will be a 20-point quiz. It's a mixture of matching and true-false. Study very carefully, prepare, read through the whole chapter, prepare the information. I know, for example, on there's like one of the pieces you're going to need to look at is the map. So you're going to need to know, bless you, is this the British territory? Which is the French territory? Which is the Dutch for the Netherlands? Which is the Portuguese? Which is the Spanish? So you'll need to put those to memory as far as like who controls what. You will benefit some because we will have covered some of those materials, some of that information by that time as we go through. But you definitely want to make sure to read through and be prepared on that. Okay? Yeah. Okay. You guys ready? All right, let's do this. So what did we tell you about science last time? Is it a big deal? This is kind of weird because it's one of those things like we've been talking about like government and absolute monarchy and constitutional monarchy and fighting, and we had a lot on the religious ideas and so forth. You can put this down. This is an interesting thing going on here. Science is going to be very important in European history and therefore world history because Europe's going to be such a big, big deal as we move on. And it's an interesting thing because science is going to challenge, in fact, write this down, science is going to challenge religion as the source of the answers to very important questions like, how does the universe work? What explains, like why people are the way they are? When we started out this unit, we looked and saw that the Catholic Church, very important in Europe and very, very highly esteemed. And then when we got into the Protestant Reformation, we got onto all kinds of crazy things and witchcraft and so forth. And if somebody wasn't feeling well, perhaps it was because somebody had done some witchcraft, or maybe they hadn't done good enough witchcraft. If someone is sick, if someone has COVID today, is it because somebody put a witch hex on them? You think so? He's like, yes, I'm not feeling well. He turned me into a newt, right? I mean, you're like, what? Is there a scientific explanation for people who are not feeling good as a result of COVID? Yeah. Put this down. People have, during this time period, more confidence in science. Although it's going to be fascinating. Because some people will say, oh, confidence, perhaps. Maybe you also have more faith in science. That's kind of a weird mix of words, isn't it? Faith is a word. Do you associate that with science or do you associate that with religion? It's more of a religious type of word and so forth. As we go through this stuff that we're going to be getting into today really is interesting to me because we're going to be moving away from religion as a preeminent source of influence in society and moving more towards science. And eventually you're going to get some people that will go, aha, I figured it out. I have a scientific explanation as to how humans are and how their governments are and how everything is. You guys are reading Animal Farm? How far have you gotten? Pretty far along? So what does Animal Farm deal with? What political idea does Animal Farm deal with? What? Communism, yeah. Communism is a political, scientific theory of the way things are. Whoa. And by gosh, we need to have a communist state in charge of all the people and all the property and all the various different things because that's the way science works. So says the people who are in favor of communism. Which is a very fascinating thing because when we get into greater faith and understanding and confidence in science and you apply that to all kinds of different areas, it's going to get very confident. It's going to get very complicated, excuse me. In fact, I'll just throw this question out to you guys right now. Because this is kind of one of those things. We're at a period in history where our confidence in science is mixed as far as what can it solve. I mean, you get debates in society. How many of you believe scientifically that, I don't know, masks are a good prevention for spreading and catching COVID? Do you know people that do not believe in masks as a good way of preventing the spreading and catching of COVID? You do, okay? And so they would say basically, oh, there's not enough scientific evidence in there to support, mask policies. And there's been a lot of mask policies that have been put into place in various different places in this country and around the world. That's a scientific question. So you get all this debate, it's like, is this real? Is there enough evidence? And yada, yada, yada. But I don't think anyone's going to be saying, you got COVID because somebody put a hex on you. Or are they? I don't know. Let me throw this out to you. You ready? Science, math, on the one hand, religion, faith, on the other. There's going to be certain kinds of questions and certain sort of things that will fit more into the other. But let me just throw this out to you. You ready? You can put your hand up for one or the other. The most important questions in your life are answered by what? The whole science math area or the whole kind of religious faith area? How many of you guys would say the most important questions in your life are answered by the science math area? 2, 3, 4, 5. How many of you would say the most important questions in your life are answered more by this sort of faith religious area? 1, 2, 3, and then some of you guys are like 4. You're like, I saw a hand there. And some of you's like, not sure, what have you. And this is pretty typical because it's like we're at a time in life now where it's like, does science have a lot of answers? Heck yeah, we've sent people up to the moon and they came back. Woohoo, way to go science. But there's still other kinds of things that are going on out there where science is not necessarily going to be able to give confidence to everybody. So with that being the case, let's back it up to the time when science gained more power. It gained more influence. Okay, you ready? And it had to do with astronomy. We'll kind of recap this a little bit. Let me check. Addie, what planet do we live on? What is the relationship between the Earth and the Sun? It does. The Earth goes around the Sun. Well, how come I don't feel it? If the Earth is going around the Sun, like if I'm moving, I feel it. I feel the wind rushing through my hair. How come I don't feel it? You're just making it up. Because I saw the sun get up this morning and it moved. How do you know that that's the case? So what is it? Raise your hand if you believe that the that the sun goes around the Earth. No. That the Earth goes around the sun. Fine, whatever. Good grief. What about the moon? That goes around the Earth. Can you prove that? You're like, can it be proved? What is the religious position? What did the Catholic Church have to say about the relationship between the Earth and the sun? The sun went around the Earth. Does it make sense that the sun goes around the Earth? Let's kind of back it up a little bit. According to the Christian religion, which is the most predominant religion in Europe, whether it's Catholic or Protestant or what have you, where do humans come from? Where do humans come from? According to, actually, do you know? Raise your hand if you can tell me. Where do humans come from according to the religious answer? Yes. From God, okay? God created humans and put them where? Are humans pretty special? Yeah, when we go back to the humanism and so forth, the idea is humans are very special, created by God and placed on the earth. It's pretty cool. How many humans were placed on the sun that we're aware of? 0. How would they do if they were placed on the sun? Yeah, bzz, yeah, it would kind of frizzle. So there's an idea. Write this down. there's an idea within Christianity, and it's an official position of the Catholic Church at that time, that humans, created by God, very special, were put at the center of God's universe. Because humans are so special, of course they're going to be put at the center. Good grief. Are you kidding me? That's what the center is for. And so therefore, everything else that doesn't have humans on it, the moon, the sun, all the other planets and stars, goes around the human-populated planet, Earth. Right? That was the idea. And if it's church doctrine, it's church doctrine. Don't mess with church doctrine. If you're Martin Luther, you might think you can get away with it. Actually, you can't get away with it if you're far enough away from Rome. But if you're too close, be careful. Nicholas Copernicus, we did him. Nicholas Copernicus, where did he live? Actually, you need to make sure you write this down. Anybody, show of hands, where did Nicholas Copernicus come from? I may not have gotten to it. If I don't see any hands on, I don't think I do. You got it? Poland, right? Yep, Poland. Make sure you have that down. Poland is a fair distance from Rome, but after the Counter-Reformation and the Catholics had sort of like regrouped, Poland was a very Catholic area. Okay, so he's living in a very Catholic area. And he is an astronomer. He is one who's like, I'm really interested in the stars, and it's so bright at night. The stars are so bright. He's making observations. He's really interested and so forth. And he runs into some interesting observations that don't jibe with the Catholic Church. In his calculations, in his observations, he agrees with you. The Earth goes around the sun. And the planets also go around the sun. The moon goes around the Earth. So write that down. It is a sun-centered solar system. That's what he concludes. And he's doing that just without any fancy equipment or anything. He doesn't have telescopes and so forth. He's just doing it with the so-called naked eye. He's just looking at it. And he does the mathematical, oh my gosh, math? Seriously, we're going to get math calculations? Although they're not perfect math calculations, he actually concludes that the orbit of the Earth around the sun is circular. Raise your hand if you agree with Copernicus that the orbit around the Earth is circular. Nobody? Well, what else is it? Yes? It's an oval. Yes, it's an oval. It's an oval or an ellipse. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so he was a little off on that. So he's a scientist. He's very clever. He was off on that. Did he publish his conclusions? He didn't? Well, how do we know about him? Yes? Oh, there we go. Why did he wait until he died? He didn't want to get in trouble. So you can write this down. Copernicus didn't want to get in trouble, so we can actually date it. Nicholas Copernicus' ideas came down, were published, 1543. All right, now here's the cool thing. He's from Poland, so he speaks Polish. But what other language does he speak and write in that is the language of kind of the elite, the educated, and it's actually kind of the official language like within the top church officials too? Latin. Very good, Latin. And that's really cool because since he writes in Latin, who else is going to be able to read his work? Other people that know how to do Latin. Are those educated? Yes. Oh, by the way, does this guy before or after the printing press? Gutenberg. After. 1450 was when the printing press. So this guy's going to be able to get his stuff published. And it's going to spread to other various different people. And you're going to start building on it. This is the cool thing about science. I don't know more than this guy. Oh, wait, no, I do. How can I possibly know more than Copernicus? Yeah? Exactly. I've had access to all the information that came out since Copernicus, so we can keep building on it and building on it with all that accumulated information. Yeah? I mean, that's pretty cool. So, like, for example, your high school science classes are more advanced than my high school science classes. Even in that time frame, more has been discovered. Okay, Johannes Kepler, you can write down his name. He came after Copernicus. Okay, so he actually was born after Copernicus died, so his work is available. Kepler is a German, and he adds to the work of Copernicus. He's also an astronomer, So he's reading it in Latin, even though he speaks with his neighbors and so forth in German. And I believe he's the one that added to it the idea of the ellipses. Right? So Kepler is the one that was able to figure that out, the math and the observations and so forth having to do with ellipses. Now there's a lot of really cool things going on here. It's kind of like when people look at history and they're like, oh, I'm interested in all kinds of things and so forth, but I'm interested in the history of art. I'm interested in the history of music. I'm interested in the history of science. Everything ties into history. So, I mean, you can learn about science in science classes, but the historical impact is also very, very interesting. Kepler added to what Copernicus had. Not as many people know Kepler, though. The one that a lot of people know about is Galileo Galilei. Let's talk about Galileo Galilei. His life and his work is going to be very profound. By the way, anybody know where Galileo Galilei is from? Galileo Galilei. Did that help you? Italy, yes, exactly. He's from Italy. So is he closer to Rome? Is he within the Catholic Church area? He's very much within the Catholic Church area. Galileo Galilei, his lifetime about the same as Johannes Kepler. And he had available to him, write this down, additional instruments, scientific instruments. Can you tell me, what is an instrument that allows me or you to see something bigger than it would appear if I were just looking at it straight on? There's actually two different kinds of things. One of them Galileo is going to use a lot, but there's another one actually that helps other people. If I were to look at really teensy, eensy, weensy things and try to look at them, what kind of thing would I need to look through? Microscope. They were developing microscopes by that time. Some of the early microscopes. Microscopes are going to help you look up into the sky to see the stars a little bit more clearly. But does anybody know, how do you make a microscope? What do you do to get that? How do you do that? How do you make it? Some people will look at microscopes and by the way, what's the thing maybe you can see stars and things like that more clearly? Telescope, thank you very much. Write that down, telescope. Galileo will have a telescope, and he'll point it up in the sky, and he'll look at it. And people will go, that's like the devil's instrument. It's a sorcerer's tool. Is it a sorcerer's tool? Is this like dark magic or anything? No, but some people would accuse them of doing that. It's like, oh, I can see things through there. It doesn't look the same. Can anyone explain, how does that work? What do you do in order to get a microscope? What do you do in order to get a telescope? What is in there that makes you see things bigger than would otherwise be through the naked eye? Through what? Lenses? A lens? What is a lens made out of? Glass. So what do you do to make a... What you mean, like you work with glass in such a way that it like expands or it prisms or something, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger? It's cool. Advances, write this down. Advances in the use of lenses. And you can put a lens on top of a lens on top of a lens and get it magnified even bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is crazy stuff. When you start talking about like, oh, I don't know, diseases. Somebody looks like, wow, they're really, really sick. And you're like, what could possibly be? Did somebody actually get like some, like, you know, some witch do something to them? They're like, no, actually, why don't you look at this? And you look through it, instead of seeing a little droplet of water with sort of, I don't know, like bits of dirt or something in there, you actually see little things moving around. Little teeny life forms. How many little teeny life forms do you have inside your mouth right now? You're like, ooh, I don't want. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, you know, keep it behind the shield, keep it behind the face mask and so forth if it's like that. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have all these various different advances. Galileo, write this down, he ran into trouble with the church, the Catholic Church, because Galileo did what the previous ones, Copernicus and Kepler, for example, did not do. Galileo said, there's my telescope, there's the moon, look at it, it's not perfect. Oh, and by the way, let me tell you about the relationship between the earth and the sun. The earth goes around the sun. How do you like that? He said the way it was. And he got called on it. Write this down. He got called in front of the Pope, or in front of the Catholic Church run by the Pope. He got called on it. I need a Galileo. Where's my Galileo? Galileo, you've been called in front of the Catholic Church. You've been accused of heresy. You've been accused of going against the Holy Word in the Bible that has been interpreted to say that humans were put on the center of the, of the universe. What do you have to say? Will you back down from your position now that it is made clear to you that the Catholic Church is against this? Wow, why did you say yes? By the way, write this down. He said yes. Yeah, he recanted. You know how to spell recant? R-E-C-A-N-T. He recanted. Why would you recant? He doesn't want to. That's a good point. He doesn't want to die. They put a lot of pressure on him, and he recanted. I mean, he was making his arguments. For example, he made this argument, translated into English. The Bible tells you how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go, as an example, right? The heavens being up in the universe and so forth. But they put pressure on him, and he didn't want to be, severely punished. They did put him under house arrest. Write that down. Even after he finally recanted, they're like, we're going to keep a close eye on you, and so forth. That was the official position of the church. Who's going to win in the long run between Galileo and the Catholic Church? The official position? Who's going to win? Who's right? Who's right? Who's right? Galileo's right. Galileo's right. Galileo's right. He's right. So why'd you back down? He doesn't want to die. Okay, fine. You don't want to die. All right. So that's what it takes. A lot of pressure to get Galileo to back down. So we've got who provides today? Who provides the best answer as to how the relationship, the physical relationship of the universe is? A particular religious belief system or scientific astronomers and so forth, yeah? The science on that particular area. So in the area of astronomy and in the area of physics and so forth, let's give some credit to the scientists, okay? This guy almost was named #1 most influential person from the millennium, Isaac Newton. And here, I love this quote here. It was kind of like what I was talking about before. If I have seen a little further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Isaac Newton. He learned from all the people previous. And so he started out with the advantage of having learned from them. So what did he give in the area of science? Did he provide a lot of himself to that accumulated body of scientific understanding? Heck yeah. Heck yeah. In fact, write this down. Isaac Newton. This guy's from England, right? 1643 to 1727. He was born the year after Galileo died. His big area is physics. And suffice it to say, the guy's a genius. He is a crazy genius. This guy is smart. I mean, he takes everything that everybody else knew, and he just builds on it. He theorizes stuff, right? Anybody know? Here's the deal. Isaac Newton actually had to leave London. He was in the London area and so forth, but they were having another, I can't remember which plague it was. It wasn't COVID. And so they're like, we got to get you out of town. And so he went into the countryside, and he had a lot of time to himself. He was hanging out in the countryside. Anybody know the story of Isaac Newton? And how, supposedly, he was inspired to figure out the law, write it down, of gravity. The law of gravity. Do you know? An apple fell on his head? So what does that mean? The law of gravity means don't sit under apple trees that are full of ripe apples because they're going to lunk on your head. What does that mean? What does that mean? So an apple was in a tree and then it came down. What is that? What is the law of gravity? What is the law of gravity? How can the law of gravity explain the movement of objects? An apple moved from the tree to where? Why? Do you know? Can anyone explain the law of gravity? It's a law. It's a scientific law. Can anyone explain the law of gravity? Can you explain the law of gravity? Can you explain the law of gravity? Yes? Okay, so you're describing that there's a gravitational pull, and it's fall. What do you mean fall? I suppose if you looked at the Earth and the apple from the other side, it would be going the opposite direction. What do you mean fall? What are you talking about? Towards the ground? Well, the moon's up in the sky. I don't see it falling. Are you saying that our Earth has gravitational pull on things? Does it have a gravitational pull on you? Does it have a gravitational pull on me? All right, get ready. Watch this. I'm going to try and leave the Earth's gravitational pull. Ready? Didn't work. Why not? Why not? What would it take to leave the Earth's gravitational pull? The moon, is the moon in the Earth's gravitational pull? That's actually an interesting question. It is? It is. How do we know the moon is in the Earth's gravitational pull? It is going around the Earth. If it was not in the Earth's gravitational pull, where would it be going? It would be going somewhere else. Is it possible? Somebody help me out here. If I wanted to escape the Earth's gravitational pull, help me out here. What would I need to do? What? A jetpack? How far would I have to go in order to escape the Earth's gravitational pull? Beyond the moon? Yeah, I definitely have to go beyond the moon. And then I would just be like, what is this? He figured it out. Write this down. The law of gravity. The laws of motion. Oh my gosh, this guy figured it all out. The law of gravity, the law of motion. Let me see if I can get the good slide. Oh, here we go. This is what Newton didn't see. This is actually what happened. Just kidding. This is not what happened to the apple. Why is that not the case that the apple went I don't know. Is there something that could fall out of a tree that might have that kind of trajectory going this way, that way, and so forth? What? A leaf. Yeah, exactly. Why? But the leaf ultimately will come down to the earth. Help me out here. You guys are brilliant. How does the law of gravity work? Let me ask you this. The moon. Does the moon have gravitational pull on the earth? Yes, it does. Write it down. The moon has gravitational pull on the earth. You're like, really? In fact, can someone tell me, I know you can, what part of the earth's components really is affected quite a bit by the moon's gravitational pull on a regular, predictable basis? Yes. The tides, the water. Did you know the water is pulled toward the moon? It's not pulled off of the earth, but it's pulled. Not so much that it will leave the earth, but so that it will come and go. Weird. How does this work? Have you learned this, guys, yet? What is the law of gravity? Stuff goes towards the gravitational pull. Do you have gravitational pull? No, you don't. What if you were a planet? Would you have gravitational pull? Well, what does it take to go from being you to being a planet, and then all of a sudden now you have gravitational pull? You got to be bigger? How big do you have to be? Is Isaac Newton say you have to be pretty big in order to have gravitational pull? No, write this down. Isaac Newton says everything has gravitational pull. Everything. Everything. It's all relative, though. Which has more gravitational pull on the other? Earth or the moon? Which has greater gravitational pull on the other? The Earth on the moon or the moon on the Earth? Earth on the moon. Why? Because it's bigger. That was easy. How about the Earth and the sun? Which has greater gravitational pull? The sun. That's why we're in the orbit around the sun. Right? Which has... Do I have gravitational pull? Thank you. I do. Do I have a gravitational pull on you? Yes, I do. Do you have gravitational pull on me? Yes, you do. Well, why aren't we crashing into each other? What has greater gravitational pull on either of us so that we're not being like drawn toward each other? Thank you very much. The Earth. Is this weird? I mean, seriously, watch this. I'm going to do an experiment, okay? I have gravitational pull on the Earth. Do we agree? The Earth is being drawn toward me. And the Earth has gravitational pull on me. So if I jump up in the air, at some point in time, watch this. Did you see the Earth move? I suppose if you had some sort of a measurement and so forth, you could measure. It would be very, very, very infinitesimal and so forth. But this is fascinating stuff. What makes a gravitational pull? Mass, stuff, your size, your density. In fact, this is really weird. You could have something that's so, so small and so, so dense, like a black hole. Do black holes with such a massive amount of crunched, tight, dense mass have the ability to attract and keep in its gravitational orbit masses of stars and planets? Yeah, it's called the Milky Way. At the center of the Milky Way is like this big, huge, massive black hole thing that is just keeping everything. And so it's like, whoa, this is, way to go, Isaac Newton. How about this one? Write this down. For every action, there is an equal and opposite. Wow. Who came up with that? Newton. Yeah, Newton is a physicist. Yeah, here we go. When physicists have kids, right? This is just kind of goofy. Right? Have you ever seen one of those ones that's like ding, 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 ding? Yeah, this would be really bad if they did that to you at the playground. What's going to happen when that little boy bumps into the other little boy? You're going to bump into the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, and then what's going to happen with this little girl over in the end? She's going to swing up this way and then crash back into this one. It'll be a perpetual motion thing, or at least until like the energy is sort of run out and so forth. Or which of them is going to get off the little swing, crying home to mom, going, Dad is doing experiments with us again. This is terrible. Yeah, I mean, this is the laws of motion. Oh my gosh. Put this down. People have looked at what Newton figured out and said, this guy is so genius. If we were just left to our, learning a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, instead of these big, huge leaps of like intelligent amazement, he's probably, I've heard it said, somewhere between maybe 50 to 100 years ahead of his time. You write that down, 50 to 100 years ahead of his time. So if you think of it this way, let's just say 100 years. If we didn't have Newton, science may not have moved ahead by a 100-year measurement. So what would that mean? The status of science and technology today? What would be our scientific technological advances? What would we not have available to us? Would we have electric lights? Barely. Would we have the internet? No. Computers? Telephones? Not cell phones. Maybe barely telephones. Yeah. Would we have gone to the moon? No. So this guy just really added a great deal to it. Okay? This is science, and his understanding and his contributions have given a huge amount of confidence. Astronomy, physics, right at the forefront. You got that? And it's going to spread over into other scientific areas. Medical science is going to go through some great leaps and bounds and so forth. It's going to be a little bit slower, but eventually they will also be making some things. And here we go. To me, there never has been a higher source of earthly honor and distinction that connects it than that is connected with advances in science. So I want to transition now slightly, and Newton seems like a good place to do this. In your handout, right after Newton and physics, there is a concept called enlightenment. And I want you to write this down. Enlightenment. In fact, people look back at this time period that Newton was living, and notice we're getting right here toward the end of this time period. So the middle of the 1700s and onward. Here is Newton, or early 1700s, and then as we move forward, Here's Newton now entering into what is now referred to as the Age of Enlightenment. We have more science and, write this down, greater confidence in science as the source of the answers to important questions that we have. I'll say that again. The Enlightenment is this huge confidence that more and more people are having that science has got the answers. And let's look on the flip side of that. If science has got more of the answers, where do you turn to less, perhaps, for answers than you had previously? Where? The church, exactly. The church. So we're going to start seeing the church diminishing somewhat in this time period. Isaac Newton is going to be among them. There is a huge confidence. I'll tell you what, sometimes that confidence is going to go beyond, because people will go, we have no need for religion and the church and all those things and so forth. In fact, let's get right to it. Within the Enlightenment will be the development of a thinking, a way of thinking called deism. Let's go ahead and write this down. Deism. This is very interesting. Is it a religious belief? Perhaps. It's definitely based on science. Deism. It's not quite atheism. Can anyone tell me what is atheism? What is atheism? Have you heard of atheism? What's atheism? There's like no God, right? There's no God, there's no divinity, there's no supernatural. It is what it is, what it is. Science. You see what you see, and that's what it is. Deism is not quite that, but it's pretty close. You ready? Deism. And some of the people during the time of the Enlightenment start to have some deistic ideas. And they have to be careful about it, because if they live in a community that is very strong in their religious beliefs, they will look at a deist and go, seriously? You don't sound like you've got the wrong Christian belief. You've got just the wrong belief, period. Here's what deism will say. Are you ready? Write this down. Almost fits in sort of like Newton's way of the world. In deism, there is a God. All right, there we go. There's a God. And what about this God? Well, let's see. This God created the universe. Okay, there we go. God created the universe. And created all of the laws of science, law of gravity and motion and so forth. All right? That's it. And literally, that's it. In deism, that's the whole job description for God. Creator of the universe and all the laws, and once that's done, just let it go. Let it roll. That's what deism is all about. Let it roll. Well, now, wait a minute. Doesn't that... Well, what about if something is going wrong and people are like, things are going wrong, and I want to pray. I want to pray to God to intervene. Does deism allow for God to intervene and answer prayer? No. No such thing as miracles. No such thing as prayer. Write that down. No such thing as intervention. It's almost like, in a deist point of view, God created the universe. It's like a clockmaker. God creates the clock, winds it up, sits back, and watches it go. Deism. One of the interesting, it's just one of those things where it's like, some people would look at that time and go, wow, a deist. You got to be careful, who you talk to and so forth. There is no hero coming. Where does Jesus, within the Christian explanation, fit into deism? Miracles? No miracles. Write that down. No miracles. No miracles. You don't have intervention and so forth there. And in fact, there was, let's see if you guys can get this, because you're going to see the picture here in a moment. Raise your hand if you can get this one. This is an early American. In fact, one of the early presidents of the United States. He was a deist. And he actually took the Bible and he took out all the stuff that had to do with miracles and supernatural kinds of things, and he took it all out. because he's like, that just doesn't really belong there. And the stuff from Jesus as far as like giving good advice on how people should live, he left that in there. But as far as all the other miracles, he took it out. It was a very compact version of the Bible. Who was this? American, who was a deist. Anybody have any guesses? How many of you guys think it was George Washington? You think it was George Washington? John Adams? Thomas Jefferson? James Madison? Donald Trump? No, Donald Trump was not around in the early stages of the United States of America. Thomas Jefferson. In fact, yeah, I pulled this slide off of the internet. Irony, only in America do we engrave "In God We Trust" next to a portrait of a non-believer, at least a deist. Very interesting, okay? Part of the Enlightenment, deism, that, if you would have it, faith in science as the way to explain how things are going on in the universe this way, that way, and so forth. Deism. It's not quite atheism, but as far as like the supernatural and applications and heroes and prayers and miracles and so forth, it's not too far off from it. Okay? Deism. John Locke. Ooh, now, let's get into this next part here. When we talk about science, we've got like the physical science, this, that, and so forth. But one of the things you need to understand is that the scientists believe we can use those same principles to explain how humans work. Boom, write that down. We can use science to explain how humans work. So they move aside religious concepts like sin and things like that and come into, oh my gosh, what do we call it? Social sciences. What is the science that helps explain how people work in politics? Political science. What is a scientific understanding of how people behave like as an individual? Psychology. Or in a group? Sociology. Or with respect to buying and selling things in the marketplace? Economics. Social sciences will develop to try to explain how humans work. And can humans be easily predicted as far as their behavior? When somebody behaves in a certain way, is there a scientific answer? Perhaps. Some would say. John Locke is going to come up with the social contract about how humans relate to one another. You guys ready? Hold on. We'll get you guys out in time. Don't worry. John Locke's social contract is this. Are you ready? He says that humans relate to one another and give power to government, but the government needs to look out for their individual rights. I'll have to explain this a little bit more because the social contract is going to help explain how the United States ultimately sets up our government. Okay? But we'll come back to John Locke next time.